Welcome to the Broken System Podcast. I'm your host, Robert, and joining me is my insightful co-host, Lexi. Together, we're here to uncover the flaws and challenges within our justice system, where fairness and equality often fall short.
In this podcast, we aim to delve into the complexities of our justice system and explore the experiences and perspectives of those who have been affected by its shortcomings. We'll dive deep into the stories of individuals who have faced injustice and examine the systematic issues that perpetuate the broken system.
Our goal is to bring awareness to the disparities and biases that exist within our justice system, and to inspire our listeners to take action. Through thought-provoking discussions, interviews, and analysis, we'll explore the various aspects of the broken system and seek to understand how it can be reformed.
We believe that by shining a light on these issues, we can empower our listeners to become advocates for change. We'll discuss potential solutions, highlight success stories, and provide resources for those who want to make a difference.
So whether you're a concerned citizen, a legal professional, or simply someone who wants to learn more about the flaws in our justice system, we invite you to join us on this journey. Together, let's challenge the broken system, amplify unheard voices, and work towards a more just and equitable future.
Get ready to explore the depths of our justice system like never before. This is the Broken System Podcast.
This content is not suitable for children, as it may contain material or themes that are intended for a mature audience. Additionally, it is important to emphasize that individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law, and judgments should be reserved until a fair and impartial legal process has taken place.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Broken System Podcast are entirely their own and do not necessarily represent the perspectives, opinions, or positions of the hosts or contributors.
Welcome to the Broken System Podcast, where we delve deep into the cracks and flaws of the justice system. I am Robert Palmer.
And I'm Lexi Kakis. In this week's episode, we shine a spotlight on the harrowing case of Tony Viola, a man wrongfully accused and convicted by a multi-jurisdictional mortgage fraud task force.
Tony's ordeal began with 3 indictments and 2 trials, all stemming from identical charges brought by the task force. Accused of orchestrating deceptive schemes to secure no money down mortgage loans, Tony found himself sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison. However, from behind bars and without legal representation, Tony uncovered crucial evidence that the Justice Department had withheld, ultimately leading to his exoneration in a second trial. His case exposed systemic issues within the prosecution's approach, potentially impacting the fates of many others ensnared by the task force operations.
Central to Tony's acquittal was Don Pacella, the office manager for the prosecutor's office, whose pivotal role in uncovering evidence proved to be instrumental. Dawn witnessed unthinkable misconduct, and her efforts shed light on the complexity of banks in approving dubious loans, challenging the government's narrative of mortgage fraud. Sadly, just before she was supposed to testify on Tony's behalf in his second trial, she was found dead in her apartment from an alleged alcohol overdose. Dawn's story is being covered on the Seeking Justice podcast, an investigative YouTube live series on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. EST, and also available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Tony's road to injustice was marred by misconduct and manipulation. Federal prosecutor Mark Bennett and state prosecutor Dan Caceres misrepresented facts and denied critical evidence under oath. Their actions not only contributed to Tony's wrongful conviction, but also raised serious questions about the integrity of the task force operations.
Arvin Clark, chair of the Mortgage Fraud Task Force, oversaw questionable activities, including undisclosed payments to informants and evidence manipulation. His controversial involvement, coupled with the suspicious circumstances surrounding Don Pacella's untimely death, underscores the lengths to which some may go to suppress the truth.
The case also unraveled personal entanglements, notably the romantic relationship between prosecutor Dan Caceres and government witness Catherine Clover, blurring the lines of objectivity in the prosecution.
Despite Tony Viola's acquittal, the fight for justice persists. Ongoing investigations into key figures, finances, and legal battles underscore the complexity and ongoing nature of his case. We encourage you to check out the evidence locker on Tony's website at www.freetonyviola.com for all documentation.
Join us as we dissect the layers of injustice in Tony's wrongful conviction and explore the relentless pursuit of truth and accountability. Welcome to this week's episode of the Broken System Podcast. Welcome back as we continue with Tony's story. Thank you guys, and here we go.
Yeah, and I think they got hot and bothered, and they got all lathered up, and they just completely lost any sense of fairness or legalities or anything. They got all riled up and testosteroned out, and how dare you not plead guilty, and how dare you go on TV. They just expected to plead guilty. Thank you for prosecuting me and destroying my company. I remember telling the lawyer once, he said, "You're upsetting Mark Bennett. Mark Bennett's really upset." Because I would never say no comment to journalists. I wasn't going downtown to the TV stations asking to go on television, I can assure you. But if they came to my office or they came to my house, I answered the questions. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And the lawyer said that this guy, Roger Sonnenberg, who loves Mark Bennett. When Mark Bennett was getting disbarred, all these defense lawyers are writing letters to talk about how great Mark Bennett is. Okay. So anyway, he's the guy with the $3,000 restitution. So Sonnenberg, they're all telling me, listen, you're upsetting Mark Bennett. You can't say this stuff. You can't say it on TV. I said, what do you mean I'm upsetting Mark Bennett? He's destroying everything I worked for my entire life. He's destroying my reputation. He's ruining my company. They're going to try and put me in jail. And I'm supposed to worry about his feelings. I'm not going to do it. I don't care. And they said, oh, you can't upset Mark Bennett. So apparently these guys have fragile ego management issues as well as a criminal defendant. I'm like, let's go to trial. Let's go to trial. And then the other thing that the government would do is you could Xerox the Encyclopedia Britannica. And you could say, I just turned over 45,000 pages. That's what they used to do. Your Honor, we've just turned over 75,000 pages. And it was a lot of times the same pages. It was completely irrelevant stuff. HR manuals from banks, stuff that was ridiculous. Had nothing to do with anything. But then the 3 pages, which is the FBI interview with the bank, was only 3 pages. Or the 1 page that the bank had these no money down cashback loan programs, the Argent Advantage program, page 83 of their book. It was only like 10 pages that really mattered. We didn't get those 10, but we got oh my gosh, we've just given you thousands and thousands of pages. They play all these ridiculous games. And then you got these egos. They really take it personally if you say, I would like to proceed to trial, even though supposedly, I know we don't follow it. There is a constitution. You're supposed to have a constitutional right. The government charges you with a crime to confront your accusers and go to trial. They took it as like a personal insult to their manhood that I had the temerity not to immediately plead guilty and thank them. Thank you, Mr. Bennett, for prosecuting me and letting me go to jail for 10 years and see the error of my ways. And I'm going to do push-ups for 10 years and Sudoku puzzles. And I'll come back and be a new person and work at Burger King. Thank you, sir. That's essentially what they're
right. What they want. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly.
And I also think too that so just how Robert said, like most of them wouldn't, like you said before, having the United States versus Tony Viola on paper alone, like that's a very heavy weight. And so most people probably didn't want to take the time to fight it appropriately. They just figured I'll plead out, do what I got to do, and just keep it moving. But I think what's really interesting for you is that over time, you were able to put more pieces together. I think more so of them once you were in prison, correct?
Oh, yeah. We never stopped doing investigative work. I was very fortunate with Bob Frederick and my friend Melanie, who's always helped run around and get stuff. We just continued. It was brutal. It's not easy to get anything done in jail, but we were able to do it. I'll give you a quick example of jail law. The FBI had claimed for 10 years in court filings and in transcripts that they never sent any federal evidence to the task force. They said, we prosecuted the case on our own, and whatever was going on at the task, we don't have anything to do with it. And then we got this box of records because we kept making records requests. And so a box, I think Bob Frederick got it. And he said, I'm going to send it to you. And I said, Bob, there's really not a lot going on here. So yeah, if you send it in, I'll go through it. If there's something going on here, I'll let you know, but it's pretty boring. So I went through it. And what do you know? One piece of paper started unraveling the whole case. That's what led to Yale getting appointed and everything else. The one piece of paper was a receipt from the FBI bringing 19 boxes of evidence before the first trial. Again, that's the key, before the first trial, from the U.S. Attorney's Office to where? The task force building. One piece of paper. So it's like a sweater with a thread sticking out. And you start pulling and
Just
the
start
pulling. Yep.
All of their court filings for years were false. And what proved it? Their own documents, not me, their own thing. So that started unraveling the case. And finally, a judge in Pennsylvania, where I was litigating this because I was in prison there, assigned. So wait a minute, this is crazy. The government's pleadings are contradicted by their own documents. They were ordered to explain it. They couldn't really explain it. And then they said, oh, we've been lying for 10 years. And that's how I got released from jail. It's awful. The other thing in jail, continuing this ego management issue, the jail officers Some didn't care. Indifference is great from a cop in jail. There's drones bringing in drugs. People are overdosing and dying in jail, but they're worried about my legal work. Okay. And it's so hard to do legal work in jail. You got to buy these typing ribbons. They ration them. You can't get them. So you only buy so many or so many stamps. So I used to have to trade with other inmates. There was these things called plantain chips, and there's some kind of potato chip. I don't know. They were basically, you'd be willing to shoot people over it. So I would buy them, and then so I'd leave with this big commissary bag, and then by the time I walked back to my place, this guy got 4 bags of chips, and I got some stamps, and then this guy got these honey buns. So I don't even know. It's like a Danish. I don't think it's good. It tastes like chemical. Like if you buried it for 50,000 years and you unburied it and ate it, it would taste the same as it does today. Like these guys love these stupid honey buns. So I had to buy 5 honey buns and Nutella. That was another thing. You would definitely, for a jar of Nutella today, you'd add 5 years to your sentence, but you just want them to. So it was hilarious. So I'd buy this crap and then trade it. So I'd get back to my cell and I'd have like a bag of oatmeal and like stamps and typing ribbons and a correction ribbon. You were literally using 1970s. Oh, by the way, this is fair according to the Justice Department. They got lawyers. There's no internet. You can't get law review articles. Even if you have cases on the computer, sometimes they take the good ones off because one of the ones that I had, they took that off. It wasn't searchable for other inmates. So anyway, there's all kinds of gamesmanship in the jail. These officers, some of them would just be so angry that I would sit in the law library typing and researching my case. And they would throw my legal work away. My friend Melanie had to mail it back in because we had copies everywhere. So it's very difficult. So the one officer, I never used to try to talk to the police in jail because nothing really good could ever come from it. Mm-hmm. And at the high security jails, you can't really talk to an officer without having another inmate with you. Because I think, are you snitching? So anyway, I came from these high security jails, and then I was at these camps where low security jails. By the time but I was like I just didn't want to talk to these people. I didn't want to be mean to them, but I didn't want anything to do with them. And this one guy would say, "Hey, you should give up your legal work. What are you doing?" And I remember saying to the gentleman, I said, "Sir, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but let's say by some miracle I win my case and I'm released. There's thousands of inmates here. They're not going to shut the jail down. You're not going to get fired. Who cares? Who cares? Why do you guys care that I'm typing stuff? I'm not writing up the officers in the jail. This is my own case. I'm trying to get. What would you do if you were sitting in a jail? You might fight your case too." And they would be so upset, and it just bothered them to no end. They used to tell my visitors, my friend Melanie would come, they used to tell my visitors, "You should just forget about these dudes in jail. They're scum. You should just live your life. You shouldn't come." They would be angry. I had attractive friends. They would say, "Oh, how could you have a girl like that? And you're a criminal, and I'm a hardworking guy, and I don't have it." Anyway, and then the best thing about jail cops is they all hate socialism. They hate it. They have a government job. They do nothing all day. The inmates do their work. So if you're the officer in the kitchen, you don't cook anything. You just stand there, and the inmates are making the oatmeal or whatever. That's the ultimately hilarious thing of just listening to all this stuff. Anyway, it's brutally difficult to get anything done. You can, if you have friends on the outside sending stuff in, yeah, you can read, you can write, you can research, but without help from the outside, it's next to impossible. And I was constantly being shipped from jail to jail. It's called diesel therapy. When you fight your case, Viola to the office, 322-38160. Yes, sir. Pack your stuff. Why? You're going, where am I going? You'll find out when you get there. And then you'd be in jail transit for weeks or months at a time. And so brutal to try to do legal work in prison. Brutal.
They try to make it to where you just give up.
Or you miss deadlines. You're in some van in some godforsaken county jail or somewhere, and you don't have access to your legal work. You don't get served papers there. And they do want you to either give up or just, "Oh, you missed the deadline. Too bad. You can't file it anymore." Now, when the government misses deadlines, like for instance, like now this legal fight takes years. Like we had oral arguments in July. We still don't have a ruling yet from a court. When they were prosecuting me, we had great exuberance, tremendous enthusiasm. We never missed a beat. Now this guy in Washington, he just left the Justice Department, a guy named John Moustakis. He's sending me these whiny emails about he can't file. I got another records case in Washington that's gone on for 12 years. My son is sick. He has to stay home from school. We need extensions, holidays. I said, "When were you expecting Christmas to fall this year?" I'm just curious. Is it different? They don't let me out of jail during holidays. Anyway, so what you get is the friendly. See, when the government wants to destroy your life and be powerful, they're all the power in the world, right? Mark Bennett of the United States. But when they want to be the affable, overworked, friendly bureaucrat that just has so many cases and a heavy workload, and really it's not my fault and I didn't prosecute you, they play what I call the friendly bureaucrat. They never tell you to go F off. They just politely tell you we need more time, or maybe you should move on with your life.
Say without saying it.
Yeah, exactly. The friendly bureaucrat. Oh, shucks. But now it takes years to get pieces of paper, and it takes years to have court filings, and the judges all enable this stuff because they all love prosecutors. The way the 17-year-old likes the vampire in the movie or whatever, that's how judges like the FBI and prosecutors. They are there to protect these people. And my case is the ultimate Pandora's box, the ultimate can of worms. If I'm innocent, 1,000 people are innocent, and the county's going to have to give everybody all their restitution back. They're going to have to pay legal fees back. So this is like a catastrophe for them. And there's nothing short of that I would, you're not going to pay me to shut up, and you're not going to, I have no idea if I can win, but let me tell you, the government.
You're going to try.
Yeah, at this point, we need a new investigation into what happened to Dawn, how she passed away, and the suspicious circumstances of the whistleblower's death, why she's wearing a wire, and why you're hiding evidence and putting innocent people in jail. So short of that, I don't know how this thing would get resolved.
So 2 trials, you were sentenced to what was your original sentence?
Almost 13 years in jail.
13 years.
First trial, and whatever, $3+ million of restitution.
Second trial,
acquitted on the same charges.
After how long from the first trial?
I was put in prison January 5th of 2012, and the second trial started February of 2012.
Okay.
10 years of legal wrangling. This makes sense in America, apparently. I proved my innocence at a trial and still was in jail for 10 years. I was the only federal prisoner that had proof of my actual innocence in a box in my locker. And they kept throwing it away, and Melanie kept mailing it back in. I had a box of innocence, and Don Nugent, the federal judge in Cleveland, still hasn't ordered an evidentiary hearing so I can present proof of my innocence. Hate to bother you, Judge. I know you're busy kissing Mark Bennett's ass and playing poker with by the way, that's the other thing about the Mark Bennett disbarment. The judges and the prosecutors played poker on Thursday night. I never got invited to the poker game. It's called an ex parte communication. They're not supposed to do stuff like that. That's whole other crime. There, you can disbar the judges in Cleveland with the U.S. attorney. Anyway, they're playing poker. They're all buddies. Everything's great. I hate to interrupt any of this, but could I just have 2 hours of court time so I could just put proof of my innocence onto the court? The state judge ordered the transcripts from the second trial to be available to the federal judiciary, but Don Nugent said, no, you can't put the state transcripts on the federal docket. I wanted the transcripts because I didn't want to allege misconduct. I want to show it. Yeah. Catherine Clover took the Fifth Amendment. These witnesses recanted. I had all these FBI interviews that you guys suppressed. I have the prosecutors lying. No, we never interviewed the person. Dan Caceres, they don't know anything about it. He's in the interview, according to these papers, but he doesn't know anything about it. It's perjury. You've got the prosecutors cold on perjury. But then Don Nugent he's riding horses. It's the other thing. You go to this Rocky River Country Club or something. They play polo on Saturday. All these, it's a cabal. It's a total cabal. And it has nothing to do with fairness or justice or law or any of this stuff. And the arrogance, we're special because we're in federal court. We're smarter than you. We're better than you. Everyone's an idiot except us because we're in federal proceedings. And so then they think like they're on the side of God, and they just do whatever they want. And and in their mind, it makes sense. So really the only thing you can do is put prosecutors in jail. I don't think they would understand anything else. If you took their pension and put Mark Bennett in jail, sat in a jail cell, then he might maybe get that, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But until you start actually taking this qualified immunity away and imprisoning these people, Kim Corral got a guy named Dwayne Brooks out of jail. The detective just admitted, we don't turn over evidence. People never identified the guy in a lineup. The guy was in jail for 35 years. They hid all this exculpatory evidence. Oh, he must have done something. And the guy's teaching criminal justice at the local college, by the way, the detective that didn't turn over the stuff. So they're just cavalier with people's lives. We're just put you in jail for 35 years. No big deal. But I don't know how you stop it. I don't know how you change the culture. You don't get more money for doing the right thing. You don't get promoted for doing the right thing. You see what happened to Dawn for trying to do the right thing. It's really bad.
And that's what makes it so hard is that they take advantage of the situation, put themselves in the wrong situation, and have no repercussions for putting themselves in that position.
For instance, with the raid and televised breaking news, live guns, how about a subpoena? If they would have called, I would have given them our records. I would have said, here, take it, go through everything. We'll make you copies. Come on in, take the thing, whatever you want. I felt that I had an obligation to run the company properly. I had all these colleagues that, were earning a living and had kids and soccer uniforms and stuff they had to buy on Fridays. Okay. So I don't need to have guns at the realty office. So these raids, I mean, the whole thing is just an unbelievable charade, but we're trying to make history. Now, I don't know if we can get Dan Caceres, who, by the way, is the senior assistant Ohio Attorney General. He's like one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the state of Ohio. He's had affair after affair with government witnesses. He just did it again in a case called Tammy Keaton. Now, that lady, thankfully, was acquitted. He's having an affair with a lady named Kelly Connors. He manages her finances. She's a government witness. This is absolutely insane. The guy, I think he must have, it must be like, you guys are too young, but Evel Knievel used to be this daredevil guy that would jump on a motorcycle and he would say, I'm going to jump over 30 Greyhound buses. Okay. And then he would say, I'm going to jump over 40 Greyhound buses. I'm going to jump over the Grand Canyon. And then finally he died because at some point the motorcycle can't jump over 284 buses. I don't know. I think Dan Caceres is like the modern day equivalent of Evel Knievel. He must want to be caught. It must be a thrill for him to have sex with government witnesses. And he takes them to bars and restaurants. Like, this guy cheats on his wife. Like, I don't know. I would think you'd do it secretly, or, hey, let's meet in a hotel. No, he goes to a baseball game with 65,000 people. I mean, he takes her to the bars that were popular. The other lady Kelly Connors sings, that's the current flavor of the month. She sings karaoke. He's there. There's pictures of them smooching. The guy's married. By the way, he's a Law and Order prosecutor, but he's at the bar with the karaoke lady managing her money. Now, by the way, the Attorney General in Ohio has a law. You can't do things at outside income or outside financial entanglements without permission. So we made a request. Hey, what is Dan Caceres' approval? No, he never got approval. So he's violated the rules. So we asked him to do anything. Of course, they did nothing. So this is you got the best name, Broken System Podcast. When you have this amount of misconduct and no consequences whatsoever, it's absolutely beyond belief. And I have no idea what to do. And the only thing we can think to do is what we're doing is have a public awareness campaign. Because our premise is that, like with Dawn, like the government never will do the right thing ever. Like Mark Bennett, these guys never do the right thing ever, no matter what, unless forced. So the only way to force it is to have the public make them defend the indefensible, make somebody who's nominated for the U.S. attorney answer questions from a senator. Should the prosecutor be sleeping with these witnesses, and should $20 million of restitution be stolen? And at some point that could break through. Again, it's not a selfish thing. Sure, I'd love my case thrown out, but this is a crusade, a peasant's crusade, if you will, of a bunch of indigent people that have had just about enough. And we think it's a way to restore some faith in some of these law enforcement officials. They want people to call them and believe in them and all this, and they act like this. So this is what we're trying to do. And my case is just another day at the office, from what I can tell. There's nothing extraordinary about sadly.
It's normal. It's their normal everyday routine.
Whatever we have to do to win the case. And if I would have pled guilty and they only had to destroy the computers, okay. Or if they had to manufacture that Clover testimony, okay. There's no stopping point. And once they start digging themselves this hole, it goes on. And obviously the worst of it is with Dawn. But they're responsible for her death, one way or the other. Those people should be arrested right now. They are responsible for Dawn Pacella's death. To put that lady, she was 23 years old, 24 years old. This is crazy to put her in an no undercover training, wearing a wire, pretending to be a paralegal. What if I was a creepy guy? What if I roofied her drink and found she was wearing a wire? They put her life in danger with that nonsense.
They didn't care. They didn't
even care. And she worked for them. She was their own colleague. She made them look good. She was such a superstar. And I remember I was blessed with having so many talented people in our company. My God, I would never do something. I would think of like Sarah Brewer, or some of the ladies that there wouldn't have been a company without those ladies. Like, God, I think I could never live with myself if I did something to hurt them or take advantage of them or put them in this terrible position. Anyway, it's just absolutely shocking. And that no judge has ever, maybe it'll change, but right now, nobody's ever said that Dawn's case should be investigated. Not one bit of any indication of concern for her family or for what they've gone through. Nothing from Don Nugent or these judges, nothing whatsoever.
And I can speak to this as well, even just like researching the case through Seeking Justice and all of that, knowing that the police officers didn't even bother to like canvass the building or just do the preliminary stuff that you're supposed to do when someone is found deceased inside their apartment, let alone tell a public court, oh, she died of an alcohol overdose before the autopsy was even conducted. Right. Like all those little things are just mind-boggling.
Right. I
It
mean, it's
was
so
a
heartbreaking.
CYA.
It's heartbreaking though, because I was lucky enough to know Dawn and to see her treated like this. It's really bad. Yeah, there's 3 cell phones at the death scene. We don't collect cell phones. Her computer's missing. We don't do that. Like Lexi said, we didn't canvas. You're supposed to knock on the doors in the apartments around. Hey, did anyone hear anything? There's this. She lived in a large apartment building. There was video surveillance. They never bothered to ask, hey, do you guys have the video from 2
Yeah.
hours ago or from last night? They never bothered to do that. They didn't even call an ambulance. They called this mortuary service to take her body away. The whole thing it just stinks to high heaven. And then the medical examiners, I went there and I said, this is my friend. Can you guys please reopen this case? And he said, we didn't know she was supposed to be in court. You could go on the court docket. It's on there. And they said, we didn't know she worked for the prosecutor's office, but her badge as an employee of the prosecutor's office is in their pictures. So once again, this is the best when the government pleads ignorance. So we didn't know. And it's in their own files, their own documents. What do you mean you didn't know? Like, where's her bagpipe parade? Where's all that for this lady? So anyway, to see how she was treated is really heartbreaking. And she was such a good person and she worked so hard and made these folks look good. And I thought, my God, this is how you treat your brilliant colleague, your superstar and up and coming superstar. You can go far when you have people with that kind of talent and abilities in anywhere. I don't care what the organization is. You got talented folks like that. You could go a long way. And so it's just mind boggling to me, the callous disregard for her family, and the law to put her in this position.
It didn't. It was just whatever they had to do. What their ends justified their means is the way they looked at it, and it was just another. If it worked out, it's somebody else. They have something to keep under their thumb
Right.
to utilize down the road. But when it didn't, they wash their hands of it, throw their hands up, and do what they've got to do to make it. I guess I don't want to say disappear, but go away quietly without raising too much suspicion on them.
Right.
So
well, the only good thing about, and Lexi's alluded to it earlier, the only good thing about the fact that it's been so many years is at this point, there's fewer and fewer people in government offices that have a personal outcome, a personal interest in the outcome of my case, right? So, when Bennett was still in the U.S. Attorney's Office before he sexually assaulted the interns and did other lied and did all kinds of other stuff, according to the Inspector General. But he would even intercept the public records requests. Like he was running around to really run this cover up. And so he's not there anymore because he was fired and disbarred. So what's happened is over time, those characters aren't in those offices, or there's other people. And then you never can underestimate the ineptitude of people where they send things out like that FBI receipt. They've been lying and say, oh, we never sent anything to the task force. Tony made it up. There's no, Dawn never had federal evidence. This is all a bunch of nonsense. He's delusional. And then, oh, whoopsie, our receipts. Probably some other person who didn't know what they were supposed to hide, just printed it all out and said, here, get it off my desk. So anyway, we've sort of worn them down in a sense to various draws at court at some point to hammer these people, light them up. But it is interesting that you can, not that I want to spend my life like this, but you can really destroy their own statements with their own evidence if you just keep at it long enough. And of course, Dawn was a whistleblower, so she gave me stuff that I never would have had. So we had that to have the lady who's an insider being able to cherry pick the best stuff and give it to us. And then, of course, fortunately, our private investigator is really good. And right now, Kim Corral, our lawyer, is really good. Without Kim, she's the one who was able to get the sheriff to take a look at what Parma did. And they lit them up. The sheriff, this guy, John Morgan, he said the case should be reopened. All these things should be done even now, but they won't do it in Parma. They refused. Oh, we're not doing it. They don't feel like doing it. There's no legitimate law enforcement reason not to reopen this case. This is probably a murder. But we don't feel like it because it would embarrass our good buddy, Dan Caceres. And he was a councilman in North Royalton, which is adjacent to Parma. And it's just very incestuous and it's ridiculous,
So Bennett is gone. He's out of the picture. He's disbarred. Caceres is second in charge of the state, you said?
He's got a very powerful title, Senior Assistant Ohio Attorney General. This is, by the way, let me tell you about, I love this guy because not only does he put criminal activity in writing, which is fantastic, but he also does things that he prosecutes other people for doing. Okay, so the mayor of Niles, Ohio, a guy named Ralph Infant, is in jail right now, today. He's in jail. And they said that Ralph was allowing people to retire, because in Ohio, you can retire, get your pension after you've worked a certain amount, and then go back to work in the office on like a 30-day, month-to-month contract. So bad Ralph, bad mayor. You have to go to jail. You are letting people retire.
You're letting them double dip. You're letting them double dip.
So what does Dan Caceres do? He retires from the Ohio Attorney General's office, gets his full pension, and then starts again where? At the Ohio Attorney General's office on a 30-day contract. So he's doing this exact same thing that he's saying public officials shouldn't do. Dan Caceres is in favor of transparency. He just ran for council and lost. I hope we had something to do with it because we put yard signs all over the place and mailed postcards in there. But anyway, he was a councilman for 15 years, and he says he's in favor of transparency. Yet he was using his Yahoo email account to conduct official government business. He had his county prosecutor's signature on the Yahoo emails that he was using. And he's said he's prosecuted people saying you guys are playing games with emails and using offline conversations. And he did it to our case. I cut some commission. Some guy said he wasn't getting enough money. And Caceres said, look, Tony's a crook. He's slimy. Look at this. He's changing fees. So anyway, it's just absolutely amazing. And then we've got him emailing Catherine Clover. So I asked this Ohio Court of Appeals to make the government produce all these Yahoo emails. And the answer is Dan Caceres went through and he gave a statement. He did an affidavit that there's no relevant records. And it's absurd. It's absurd. It's like asking a drug dealer, hey, did you sell a drug? No, I certified that. Oh, okay. We won't go raid your house. So the whole thing is unbelievable. But Caceres is very powerful, but I don't know. I think the Attorney General, they may be getting tired of some of his antics from some of the stuff I'm hearing. I don't know. But the man should have been disbarred a long time ago, just on the basis of what he did to Dawn. And this affair with Catherine Clover is pretty established. His wife, we've got 150 pages of Facebook messages from Susan Caceres complaining about the affair with Catherine Clover. And we've got multiple statements from multiple witnesses. So we have that pretty much iced. And same with Kelly Connors. So anyway, he just routinely has affairs with government witnesses in criminal cases. So anyway, we really are trying to getting an investigative journalist. Hello, if anybody wants a Pulitzer Prize, just give us a ring. This guy should be arrested for what he's done. And his own words are the best evidence. You don't have to listen to one thing I say. We just print out what he said.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too. We've discussed this privately, but knowing that despite the fact that he prosecutes finance crimes and things like that, he's participated in documentaries on oxygen and things like that on homicides. When it's you're not really, that's not
he's
your
not
area.
qualified. He's an economics crimes prosecutor. He was excited about a dismemberment case. He actually hired an agent in Los Angeles to get him on these shows. Yeah, no, he's got an infatuation with murder. And if you watch him on the oxygen, he likes it. I mean, he's interested in it. There's also been people found dead in his cases routinely. There's a guy that supposedly jumped off a bridge on his way to court. There's a losing the computers. Oh, fiddlesticks, we lost the computers. That's very frequent if you go back through his cases where, oh, shucks, we don't know where they went. So he does the same 5 things over and over again. But yeah, he's got an infatuation with murder. By the way, back to Dawn, remember somebody got her medical records before she died. So that's bizarre also.
Yeah.
So they got them before she died?
It appears so. We haven't been able to get them. The city of Parma issued a subpoena, but won't tell us the results. And yes, it does appear that somebody's got her medical records.
That's interesting.
I can speak from the Dawn perspective too, of just going back to the crime scene. That's before we even discuss, oh, her body was moved, or oh, there was only 22 images that were taken, and like at least a small handful of them are all blurry and just like bad photos. And it was 2012, so like you had the technology to do it.
Right.
Like you can't even say, oh, we were only using a Nokia phone. Like you had an iPhone or whatever that you could have taken these pictures. And then even just knowing that like the contents of our garbage wasn't ever tested or explored or anything like that. And it's just so sad because you would hope that if it was one of these investigators' loved ones, they would want someone who gave a shit enough to do the job appropriately and get it done.
The contents of her stomach were never tested, and that would have been because if she was waterboarded with alcohol, you would have undigested food in the lower parts of her stomach. There's a series of obvious mistakes. I had one former law enforcement guy told me, he said, man, Tony, I hope this is a cover-up. He said, I hope this is not actually police work. He said, I hope this is not actually what they would do when they find a dead body. And then in Parma, Ohio, it's about 50,000 people who live there. It's one of the biggest suburbs of Cleveland. It's not, a tiny community. It's got a decent sized police force, but it's very politicized there, and they're protecting him. Even recently, we got a email that the police chief interviewed Dan Caceres about Dawn's case. That's not appropriate. They won't make the statement of they won't tell us what he said on that. They're treating these people with kid gloves. And so Caceres is saying, so whenever people ask anyone in Parma about Dawn's case, Tony's a criminal. Tony was convicted in federal court. Don Nugent wrote this opinion in 2014 that his case is an open and shut case. And everyone is saying, wait a minute, we didn't ask you about Tony. We asked you about Dawn. It's like Ed and Karen Pasella. If I magically win my case tomorrow, or say Mark Bennett is arrested tomorrow, they want to know what happened to their daughter. Whether I win or lose, or Bennett's in jail or not, that has nothing to do with my case. But that's what Parma says. Tony Viola is a convicted criminal, and you can't listen to him.
That amazes me. So her case currently is, what's the status of her case right now?
We've got a conflict between multiple law enforcement agencies. The cold case office in Ohio would take the case, but Parma, Ohio won't turn it over to them. And the county sheriff said it should be reopened, but Parma won't do it. So basically, the safety director of Parma, this is interesting, by the way, a guy named Bob Corey, he's the safety director of Parma. He says terrible things about Dawn to the media. She's drunk, she's an alcoholic, terrible. Anyway, Corey, when Dawn worked there, he was the number 2 guy in the prosecutor's office. He was a guy named Bill Mason, who was the county prosecutor's deputy, and he oversaw the medical examiner's office. Isn't that nice? And now he's the safety director in Parma. So this guy's all in to cover this up for his good buddy, Dan Caceres, who worked there with him. So these guys, and to top it all off, when Mark Bennett gets disbarred, he opens up an office where? Parma, Ohio. This is a sewer. This is like a cesspool of wrongdoing over there where we're just covering for each other. But the thing is that we just hope with the Seeking Justice series that's going on now that we can get someone to come forward. Somebody knows something about what happened to Dawn. There's too many people. It's hard to run a cover up when you got this many people involved. We believe that some Parma policeman knows something and can come forward, or a spouse or an ex or somebody knows something about what happened to Dawn. Dawn was involved with 1,000 cases. There was attorneys, there were investigators, there was criminal defendants. So the thing about Dawn is that she was in a very prominent position, a very coveted job that, she leapfrogged over people who wanted that position. And it was a prominent position. She was in court a lot. When she passed away, the sheriff's deputy told me that he knew her, thought she was great, and was so sad that she had passed away. So people knew her. So we're hoping that because she was a very memorable person and very charismatic and was involved in these cases, that somebody could come forward. But the nonsense that's gone on is ridiculous. And the answer is, we're just not, we just don't feel like reopening it. We're not doing it. We don't care. And the reason they don't want to reopen it is they don't want me to win my case. And they think that if they do something that's favorable to Dawn's case, that it somehow affects me. They just never do the right thing ever. It's never even a consideration, except if they're forced, which is what we're trying to do.
That's just, you would think that they would want justice and to do the right thing. That's what we always hope for. And that's what we're always taught growing up is police are there to do the right thing, and they're gonna do the right thing, and that's why you go to trial, because that's how it is. It's the American way, and that's what it's supposed to be about. But then you hear case after case of things like this, and it's sad on our side.
Yeah, you know what? Look, if it was a fender bender and some cop backed into my car and it was $200 and they didn't feel it, that's okay, or whatever, or something like that. Okay, this is a person's life.
Yep.
This is a person's life, and they don't care. That's what I'm saying. That's the thing. Forget mortgages and my case and all that. You're talking about a dead young lady who worked in their office. Okay.
Yeah. So you would think they would have fought twice as hard for her because of that.
Yes. Dawn was idealistic about justice, but if you're going to have a better system of justice, you have to have good people in it. If you have rotten people, I don't care what you have, your baseball team or you have a business. If you have lousy people, you're not going to be successful. If you have great people, you're going to be successful, no matter what the organization is. So it's just mind-boggling. And yes, these people have daughters. Would they like their daughter to be treated like this?
Not at all.
Would that be okay? So
no one wants their child treated like that. Like, no. I know for a fact Ed and Karen didn't want their child treated like that.
Of course not.
Yeah.
The problem comes is that Caceres holds so much power in the state.
Yeah.
That people that worked in the office and that were part of all of that stuff are probably terrified to say anything because it's ramifications on their livelihood. He'll hold it against them. He'll use it against them, and they'll either lose their job, their career, or whatever he decides.
Some of them probably are guilty in the sense that they went along or ignored obvious misconduct earlier. So it's harder for somebody who's involved in something wrong to come forward and say, oh, by the way. So it's a little late. What is it? A day late, $1 short for someone who is actively involved. I just don't know if somebody maybe will come forward either. See, one thing about Bennett and Caceres, we have two advantages with these guys. One, the stuff they put in writing is insane. But the other thing is they're terrible. They really treated people very poorly. So there's not exactly undying loyalty to these people. Mark Bennett has threatened so many people. There's so many stories. One lawyer told me that he used to make people sit outside the U.S. Attorney's office for an hour just because
he could.
Yeah, because he could. He wanted to be an asshole, and he wanted to make them more nervous and more uncomfortable and stuff like that. One lady was in a thing and wanted a glass of water, and he said no. It's just stuff like that. Like, it's nerve-wracking to go to the prosecutor's office. So, he yelled at people for telling them the truth. He threatened people to put people's children in foster care and indict their wives and all this. He's just a bully. So the advantage of that, not that's good that people are treated like that, but the advantage of Bennett's egomania and the way he's treated people is that, and he also used his authority for his own benefit to make friends, to cut sweetheart deals with certain favored lawyers. And so he used the authority of the United States government to build a career. And he's even now benefiting from some of that, where the restitution example, whatever. So he's got supporters because he's used his power to do things for them and make them look good, or they charge clients lots of money and got a sweetheart plea deal. And so there are people that support him, but that's not because they love him. That's because he did something for him when he was in a position to do so. But these guys were universally detested in the office. Dawn told me this. Other people have told me this, the way they treated people. So that could be it too. Sometimes people come forward not purely of good motives, but to stick it to someone who's screwed them or derailed their careers or whatever. There are stories of people whose careers were derailed because they wouldn't, engage in sexual activities with these characters. So anyway, the bottom line is you're right. People are afraid of Caceres. He's very powerful. They see the stories of Dawn. This Catherine Clover, her husband was imprisoned. This guy, Matt Fairfield. They are familiar with stories of people being found in dumpsters and jumping off bridges or being found dead in their apartment. And he still is very powerful, both as an attorney and as a prosecutor. So attorneys are fearful. If he was disbarred or investigated or fired today, you'd have all kinds of people coming forward.
Everybody would come crazy. Yeah,
because he's not right, because they're not worried that he's going to have some case that they got to plead out or figure something out. That's what we're pushing for. And if there's enough pressure on Dave Yost, who wants to be our next governor in the state of Ohio, Yost is a politician. He's not going to incinerate his political career for this creep. So he'll claim that he's just as much a victim as Dawn and I. He's appalled. I mean, you could hear it already. He'd be fired at Friday at 5 p.m. before July 4th weekend or something. But anyway, the answer is you're right. And it's preventing people from coming. Some people have helped us because they say at least Bennett was disbarred. I mean, I've gotten several witnesses that said, we wanted to help you, but my wife or my whatever family said, don't do it. But when Bennett was fired and disbarred, that they felt more comfortable coming forward because they were actually afraid that Bennett was going to put them back in jail, because Bennett has the FBI and the feds, and that's scary. Not that the state guy's not. But and Bennett was running interference for Caceres. He was keeping the FBI and all these federal agencies away from looking into Caceres. There are some federal agencies that would investigate a corrupt prosecutor, the Public Integrity Division at the Justice Department. There are some avenues, but as long as Bennett was in there, he was bottling that up because
he would never let it get past him.
Yeah,
that's just sad. That it's good that he's out of the way now, I guess is the way to put it. You said he moved to Parma and opened.
Yeah, he opened up a little office in Parma, Ohio,
because he's disbarred.
He had it went on for. This is great. This is a great Mark Bennett story. So Mark Bennett admitted all this misconduct, okay, and then fought the punishment. Okay, so he basically said, "Yeah, I did it all." The Justice Department said he lied to them. He assaulted FBI agents, postal inspectors, intern. The guy's lied. He's been a serial sexual harasser of young office administrative employees and interns for 30 years. He did it in the Ohio Attorney General's office. He did it in private practice at a law firm called Weston Hurd, and he did it in the U.S. Attorney's office. There's a 30-year history of this guy engaged in outrageous conduct. There was a retirement party for somebody. He grabbed the waitress, the server, and assaulted her. He drove home drunk. What a great guy. So anyway, then he admits it. So he hires this lawyer. Here's another slimy thing. He hires a lawyer named Richard Koblenz, who I hired after Jay Milano stole all my money, and Koblenz wrote a report that I should get a new trial, and Koblenz testified for me and was cross-examined by who? Mark Bennett. So then Mark Bennett goes and hires Richard Koblenz, and I called him up and I said, sir, why are you representing Mark Bennett? I want Mark Bennett to go to jail. You're my lawyer. And then that's a whole other, forget that sideshow. These lawyers are unbelievable. So anyway, Kim Corral is the best. I have the only lawyer in town that's willing to fight these characters. And she specifically doesn't hang out with them. She doesn't go to these wine and cheese, whatever, where you have pate and Chardonnay. Right. She doesn't do it. She doesn't even take these CJA appointments because she said, you can't, because then they'll take them away from you. Fight too hard. We're not going to give you any, you can't build a law firm based on this is the craziest story ever. Anyway, so yes, but we're very fortunate that Bennett is gone. So then he admits all this guilt and basically says, I'm a federal prosecutor. Yeah, I'm going to counseling. I admitted it. And then they want to punish him. They want to suspend his law license for 6 months. And he said, no, I don't want a law license suspension. So he ends up fighting it. If he would have been suspended and been done with it, it would have been over. But he was kind enough to drag this out for like a year and a half, which was very helpful to our case as we're moving forward, and his disbarment was going on. So the Supreme Court rules, and it's an unbelievable opinion, the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, this lady Sharon Kennedy, said he's not fit to practice law. They suspended him for 2 years in the practice of law, but then they stayed the suspension pending him not getting into more trouble and going to counseling. But I happen to know that several people have filed law license complaints to call Bennett's misconduct in their cases to the attention of the disciplinary council. So who knows what's going to happen. But anyway, the answer is he can be a lawyer right now, but this long drawn out proceeding that he wouldn't accept his punishment was helpful because we were able to engage in a public awareness campaign to make sure people knew that he was being disbarred. He's a public official. He's like Donald Trump or Joe Biden. He was on press conferences. He used his position of authority to solicit media attention. We were able to turn the tables on the guy. And now he's whining about some of the stuff that's going on. Our response is, you're a public official. You're a First Amendment person. We're allowed to say what we want about you. And you love publicity, Mark. What are you talking about? You love the media. You ran over people to get into the reporters. You had press conferences. You stood outside of the court. You couldn't get enough of it. So what do you mean you should be thrilled that we're putting your name out there. He loves, even now on his BennettLawFirm.com or whatever website, he's got his old from 2014. He got an award for putting me in jail. He's got all that on there. So can't get enough publicity, apparently.
And that's the thing. He wants a publicity when it's good publicity, but he doesn't want the bad publicity. But yet he created the bad publicity.
He made Reuters. He made, which was based in London. He was in Law 360, Cleveland.com, a local TV station did a story on him. The fact that he's out there as a sexual predator, as someone who abused his position of authority and lied. And in my court case, one great thing about him not being there is the government starting to blame him. The Justice Department. They're
going to start pointing fingers. Yeah.
We got rid of him, but he did lie in evidence, Tony, in your case. So they're blaming Mark Bennett. So they do have a way out in a sense. I'm not saying I'm going to win, but they could blame him. He's not there. It's a lot easier to win if the guy that prosecuted you was fired for blatant.
Mm-hmm. So right now, the status of your court, all of your court processes, where are you at with that?
Luckily, sometimes things boomerang. So the government shipped me all over the country to make it impossible for me to fight. But I filed lawsuits in Pennsylvania because I was in jail in Pennsylvania. This thing with Yale Law School could be a humdinger. We don't have a ruling yet. Now, if this was filed in Cleveland, Don Nugent, the federal judge, he'd have taken this thing would have been gone in 5 minutes. But Don Nugent couldn't engage in his normal cover-up stuff or sit on it for 2 years and then deny it. He would just write denied on the side, denied. Because it's in Pennsylvania. So we had some modicum of fairness. So what happened was in this Pennsylvania case, the government, the FBI said they lied about evidence for 10 years. Please disregard our sworn testimony. The Justice Department said they lied. They're ordered to produce the tapes that Dawn made. We don't have it. So our attorney, Kim Corral, is saying, and I think she's right, we don't want to file anything in court in my case until we get that ruling. Because the Justice Department is a party to that case and they've admitted lying, if that court if it makes a ruling that's very good about evidence, that's binding on the government. They're not going to be able to argue otherwise, and no court is going to say, let's have 15 more years of litigation over Tony's case. So that could be the building block or the foundation of winning. That also could be the building block because there's still 10,000 documents, not pages, but documents that have never been released, and the tapes that Dawn made. So there's a potential of an avalanche of new evidence. Really, there's no reason that any of these records should be sealed or redacted or any of this nonsense anymore.
That's what I was going to say is, I was going to say it's a closed case. Did they impound the documents?
Now they lie. They say there's an ongoing investigation. The greatest liar is the FBI. There is no ongoing investigation. The statute of limitations expired years ago, 10 years ago or 7 years ago. There's no, but they say it. Oh, there's an ongoing investigation. So anyway, the answer is the reasons that they're giving for not producing the records are completely nonsense. First of all, I want them, like the tapes. Let's talk about the tapes. This guy named Daniel Winnick from the Justice Department in Washington, he says that they're just so concerned about Dawn's privacy that they never searched for the records. This is last July. I've been suing these people for 15 years to get these tapes, and they didn't know they're supposed to look. The answer is she's deceased. She has no privacy records. So if I write a public records request to the FBI to get information about Jimmy Hoffa, the answer is not he's deceased, we're not looking. You produce the records. So what they're supposed to do is produce. She has no privacy rights because she's deceased, and I want the tapes. And the two voices on the tapes are Dawn and me. So so the government creates these fake privacy concerns. They're just so concerned about Dawn's privacy. BS. There's no ongoing investigation. So what they're saying is a bunch of rubbish. That the court should light these people up. If any judge, I know they don't usually do it, but you just got to think that maybe for what the heck, let's just follow the law. I know this is crazy. Right. There is no reason for any of these records to be sealed. Not only is there no privacy because Dawn is deceased, I want the stuff. And remember, the government created this media circus. They're saying they're worried about my privacy. Oh, really? Cry me a river. You're worried about my privacy. You had a press conference in front of my company. You had the I-team in Cleveland, the reporters banging on my house every time at 6 a.m. They hauled me to 3 different arraignments. They superseded indictments. They issued press releases. There's a YouTube video. You can still watch Mark Bennett, the nation's largest mortgage fraud case. I'm in like 6 different press releases that are still available online. They smashed me in the news media. They alerted the reporters before the raid. Now they're trying to tell me that they're worried about my privacy. And the judges indulge this crap because they love the FBI. They love prosecutors. Why? Because they're all prosecutors. In Cleveland, all the judges were prosecutors. So you work on the 4th floor is the U.S. Attorney's office. And then so you just go up the elevator. Court's fair, by the way. Then you go up to the 15th floor, and then you're a judge. And they preside over cases that they were investigating. Or like Stephen Dettelbach, the head of the ATF. He was the U.S. attorney in Cleveland. He left the U.S. attorney's office in Cleveland, went to Baker and Hostetler, and started representing clients that the U.S. attorney was prosecuting. Okay. And when he was the U.S. attorney, he was prosecuting for these opioid cases. Then he goes and represents the opioid manufacturers when he's at Baker and Hostetler, this big law firm. Then he goes back to the government. This is a joke. This is a total joke. So anyway, the answer to your question is we are waiting for a ruling in the Yale Law School case. Oral arguments were last July in Philadelphia. For the love of Pete, we hope that we get a ruling, and that could be a building block either to throw the whole case out if the ruling is good, or it could create an avalanche of new evidence, including these tapes. Frankly, there should be depositions. Bennett and the FBI agent in Caceres, they should have to answer questions under oath about why did you have Dawn wearing a wire? Who listened to the tapes? How many were there? Did you take notes? Who else knew about it? Why didn't you turn them over to the defense before trial? There should be an evidentiary hearing to determine who knew about this, because it's illegal to record a defendant's trial preparations.
Is Ohio a single party or a dual party state?
It's a single party state, but this is law enforcement to get my trial strategy. So those rules don't really apply. When you're indicted, if the government wants to talk to you, they have to call you down. You go with your lawyer downtown. They didn't want to talk to me, so they sent Dawn out to ask me questions about my case wearing a wire after I'm indicted. And it is illegal because that is an intrusion into the right to counsel. My lawyer should have been there. The government had no legitimate reason to have her wearing a wire, except that they're arrogant and don't want to admit they're wrong, and they wanted to know my trial strategy.
Yeah,
the public has, listen, there's a public interest here too. This is not just about Tony's not a realtor anymore and we should have rioting in the streets. If the government is allowed to break the law, to put innocent people in jail and wire up the office manager, the public should know about this. The public has an overriding interest in the fair administration of justice, right? Members of the public shouldn't have to wonder, gee, I wonder if the U.S. attorney is having sex with the witness. Or, gee, I wonder if they're suppressing evidence. Public confidence in judicial proceedings is paramount. If the public doesn't have any, and we're destroying it fast here, but if there's no confidence, you don't really know if the people in jail should be there, if innocent people are in jail, if guilty people are getting away, if the prosecutors are really the criminals. So what's happening is the destruction of any confidence has profound implications for the country. People may not want to cooperate with law enforcement. I saw some guy get shot, but I don't want to get involved. I don't want to call the police. This is a problem. But the courts, they like res judicata, case closed, done, can't do it. We just want finality. We don't want justice. We don't want accuracy. We just want finality. You're done. You had your day in court. You're done. But I had 2 days in court. I'm guilty, but I'm not guilty. So it's all screwed up. It's unbelievable that it's gone on this long. But the answer is, until we get that Yale ruling, we're stuck in the mud. And there's other things that we'd like to pursue, but we just can't do it right now because
until the Yale ruling.
Yeah, if we get a good, it takes forever to get anywhere.
Right.
And that thing we started a decade ago, over a decade ago, actually.
What repercussions for other cases other than yours that were prosecuted by the task force, if your case is thrown out, overturned, how does that affect the umbrella of cases that were under that task force? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it depends on why. For example, if you want to go real narrow, you could throw my case out on the basis that Mark Bennett lied about this conflict of interest waiver, that there was what was called a joint defense at trial, and that could be very narrow. And that would throw my case out, but not have wider ramifications. If you threw out the case on the basis of the evidence that Dawn gave me, that could affect many cases. If you threw out the case on the basis of interference with my trial preparation, again, that's narrow, probably Tony only. If you threw out the case because the prosecutor was having an affair with the witness, Catherine Clover, then the question is, well, did Catherine Clover testify? And according to Dan Caceres, she testified in 36 cases. Listen, what should happen, I know they don't want to do it, but there's enough evidence to have what's called an evidentiary hearing in federal court. Don Nugent is there to protect these people, but he should, or get off the case and let some fair person. All of this, I love the podcast, but it should be adjudicated in federal court. We should have an attorney. Mark Bennett should be deposed. Dan Caceres should be deposed. Catherine Clover should be deposed. We should be able to subpoena Dan Caceres' Yahoo email accounts. By the way, Caceres also has some kind of relationship with Parma. We should get those emails. Caceres was notified immediately when Dawn passed away. Maybe his cell phone coordinates. Was he near the apartment? We could think of all kinds of fun things to subpoena. I know they don't want to do it, but the amount of wrongdoing by the government in this case is so ridiculous, including a deceased person, that I believe that a fair judge should allow this thing to have an attorney, not me, Kim Corral, have a proper adjudication of this and have all of these issues examined and have evidence. And really, the government should, at some point, it's hard to believe that they will continue to defend the indefensible if they're forced to respond. In multiple court filings that I did from jail, I begged the judges to order the government to explain why Dawn was wearing a wire. And they never did. They won't do it. But that's really what we need, is a full-fledged evidentiary hearing to determine what the heck went on in this case, because there is $20 million of restitution and the debt gone, and a deceased woman, and an affair with the prosecutor. There's enough shenanigans here that it really should be done. And I don't know if you guys follow that in Colorado. Did you see that, where the DNA now they're manipulating DNA?
Oh yeah, I saw that a few months ago, where they had already set aside like $650 million in preparation for having to relook at and redo the cases and possible wrongful conviction payouts before they even got to that point. Yeah.
Unbelievable that these people think that it's a good idea to alter evidence inside the prosecutor's office. If you imprison an innocent person, you may also be letting a guilty person go away. And you know what? If you don't have enough evidence, I'm sorry, you just can't bring cases. And it's just very scary. I don't know how many more Dawn Pacellas we're going to have, or how many more wrongful convictions. One of our goals is to bankrupt Cuyahoga County. We want these people running for office to tell the public, we are going to double your property taxes and double your income taxes, because law enforcement is arrogant and we don't admit mistakes. So we leave innocent people in jail hoping they die. But if they end up winning the case, we have to pay them $500 million. That's really what the only thing I could think of is to get to that point where it's so expensive that the politicians have to tell the public, we're going to double your property taxes. Or somebody's going to have to say, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe this is wrong. But the issue is that until something affects you or might affect you, you don't care. I was complacent before I was prosecuted. I never worried about this wrongful conviction stuff. So I'm guilty, just like many people were complacent. So I don't know how else to do it. But if you bankrupt these cities, and you've got to take the immunity away, we've got to put. Listen, if Mark Bennett, let me tell you something about Mark Bennett. If he really thought that he could go to jail if he withheld evidence, and he really thought he would lose his pension, he wouldn't do it. I know they wouldn't do it. These guys they might talk tough, but they want their pension. So I don't think they would do that. I think it's the invincibility of it. And the thing is, too, an honest prosecutor loses cases because he turns over the evidence.
Oh, yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. Yeah.
A dishonest prosecutor wins more cases, like Caceres. Dave Yost gives him high-profile cases because he knows he's going to win. He will do whatever he has to do to win. You can take that to the bank. We will destroy computers. We will fabricate evidence. We will threaten witnesses. We will use perjured testimony. Nothing's off the table with Caceres, and he wins. Yost, in fact, the Attorney General of the state of Ohio is the Attorney General because of Caceres, because he was the auditor of the state, and then the Attorney General is traditionally the stepping stone to governor in many states, including Ohio. And he got all this publicity because they were doing these public corruption cases with Caceres that said people were fudging expenses and this and that. And so he loves Dan Caceres. He puts on Twitter, he's great. Justice will be done with Dan Caceres. So an honest prosecutor does not get the choice assignment because he might lose because he would turn over the stuff.
Yep. They side with caution and let it come out in court and let the judge rule on what the evidence is or not, and if it needs to be there or not.
Or they tend to have open file type discovery where it's either required or they just do it. Because remember, the prosecutor supposedly only turns over evidence to the defense that's material to the defense. But the thing is, the prosecutor doesn't really know what the defense is going to present. So the whole thing is absurd that the prosecutor can decide what's material and what's not. So a more fair person would essentially let the defense know that
here's everything.
This is the range of documents, right? What do you want? Or here's everything or most everything. And the other thing too is the other thing about the government is I've never been accused of any violence in my life. And yet they use these, like, I'm going to murder the witnesses. Like it's a gangland, like I'm going to go shoot them. Okay. So they use these ridiculous exemptions and with law enforcement techniques and all this rubbish not to turn over, which is completely nonsense. We've never threatened any witnesses. We've never been accused of that, but yet they still make all these exemptions. So they basically treat everybody like you're going to go shoot all the witnesses, like some mobster movie or something.
I was going to say that they treated your case like it was a RICO mobster.
Yes, the company was a criminal. Yes, the company was a criminal enterprise. So the company was
even if you didn't know what was going on, somebody else did it, but you were a part of it because you were the same type of business.
Yeah, and we advanced the conspiracy through all these nefarious activities. Then we hid the evidence, and because I'm a well-insulated conspirator, the tip would be not to conduct all these raids without having the basic facts.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I had to plug my computer in. I didn't realize it was unplugged. It was about to shut down. I'm like, oh no.
No, you guys have probably had enough, Tony.
No, I could talk all night about this. It's part of my passion. We can close out if you guys would like. I know we've been on. It's 2.5 hours almost. This will end up being a two-parter on our.
Okay. All right. I think we should have mercy on the audience and thank folks. Yeah. There should be some type of a gift card if you've listened to the whole thing or something. Yeah, send me your address and we'll send you like a Dunkin' Donuts card or Starbucks, something. So,
I think this is what our audience loves, is that when we're able to just flow into a conversation, and that's what this has been. So it's been great, and I know everybody's I think there's going to be a lot of questions come out of it, and what'll happen is those people will then go listen to Seeking Justice.
Good.
And learn more about Dawn, and hopefully it just continues to grow from there.
Yeah. Sure. One thing I will say, though, just to close out the podcast correctly, then we can keep chatting, is where can everyone find you or continue to support your cause and also Dawn's case?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Lexi. Okay. So a couple things. First of all, if any of the information that we have, if any other defendants or anyone who has any of these mortgage fraud cases or anything similar to this, if we can assist, we want to do that. We've always told everyone that our private investigator, Bob Frederick, all of the records are available. Dawn helped me, but she also wanted to help other people. So if any of this stuff is helpful, if any of these characters are involved in other cases, I want to make everyone aware that we're happy to assist. So there's a website about my case that my friends put together when I was in prison. It's called freetonyviola.com. We just kept it rolling even though I'm out. You can sign up for an email newsletter. It's only about once every 6 weeks. Don't worry, you're not getting too many emails. There's an evidence locker on there. So all the stuff that we've discussed is available. And you can also put comments on the blog, or if you want to be a guest blogger, just let me know and we'll let you go on there and share your story. So that's the Tony stuff. The stuff about Dawn, obviously we have the Seeking Justice YouTube Live series, and then the videos are obviously available after the broadcast. And then we also have a website called justicefordawn.com, and that's got some of the summary of the case, and it's got some evidence as well about Dawn. If you want to see the sheriff's reports or any of the information, we have that up there for people to look at. And if anyone wants to get in touch, has any other questions, my contact information is on the freetonyviola.com website. And I'm trying to be transparent with everybody and answer questions and emails or texts. So people should feel free to reach out anytime. And it's a two-way street. So we want to help others too, if we can. If you want to share your story with us, please do. And we also have a good Facebook group about Dawn, so you can join that. All the links, there's a change.org petition to put Mark Bennett in jail. All that stuff is linked on all those websites. So you can go to justicefordawn.com and you can see press coverage of her situation in my case as well. So anyway, feel free to do that. And we appreciate any interest or feedback or suggestions. Last thing is, I did put on my website something called Tony's Tips, which is how from jail, 10 years in prison, how did I take apart my case? And of course, I didn't do it on my own, but I learned a lot of what you can do with a jail typewriter. It's called an IBM Selectric typewriter. So anyway, I shared that. I put that together, and that's designed for prisoners. So if you know somebody who you feel is wrongfully convicted, or you want to do some research on your case, it's called Tony's Tips, and I'm happy to make a hard copy and mail it to anybody if anyone wants it, or it's just on the website. But we hope to share stuff that we've learned by making some mistakes, and we've got some traction, and it's really hard. It's a long slog. But anyway, if anything we've learned along the way is helpful, we're happy to share.
Thank you so much. And we're going to put the link to both of those websites in our show notes, so people that are listening on their podcast can go to that and get more information about you guys.
Fantastic.
Tony, thank you so much. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And we keep fighting the fight. I know that it's not a downhill battle from here. I think it's still quite a bit uphill battle for you, but I think things are going to happen for you. So
let's hope.
But
thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Broken System Podcast. We hope you found our discussion thought-provoking and engaging.
If you enjoy what you hear and want to support the show, please consider joining our Patreon community. You can find us at patreon.com/thebroken-system-podcast. Your contributions help keep the podcast running and allow us to bring you more insightful content.
Don't forget to connect with us on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay updated on upcoming episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and more. You can find us on all by searching The Broken System Podcast.
And finally, if you love what we do, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews not only make our day, but they also help others discover the podcast.
Thank you once again for your support. Together we can continue to challenge the broken systems around us and strive for positive change. Until next time, take care and stay tuned.